In tonight's Tax Insider, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The U.S. and 11 other countries reached agreement on the TPP this week. Supporters say it will knock down tariffs and import quotas and open new Asia-Pacific markets to U.S. companies. Critics say the accord will send U.S. jobs and businesses operations overseas. For more, I'm joined by David Williams, president of the nonpartisan Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Dave, let's start there. It's a controversial deal, and the countries taking part represent 40% of the world's economy. How does this work?
Well, Morris, you're right. This is very controversial because a lot of people don't want this to happen. But if you look at the enormity of this trade deal, this is critical for the U.S. economically because, as you said, we're talking about 40% of the world's GDP that's going to be wrapped up into this trade deal. And what this is going to do is going to get rid of tariffs and other trade barriers. So these 12 countries, 11 countries, including the United States, we can have free trade amongst each other. Now, China is not part of this specific deal because I don't think Congress is quite ready to approve China as a free trade partner, but this still is a significant move to open up trade around the world.
Congress has 90 days to review the TPP. Now, Dave, should they approve it? Is it the best deal for taxpayers?
Well, that's the big question, is whether they should approve it or not. We support free trade, and we supported Trade Promotion Authority, which kind of laid the groundwork for this deal. Congress has 90 days, so what they need to do is they need to review it very closely. There's one provision in here that is really disturbing, and this is a carve-out for tobacco. And usually when you think carve-out, you think it's a good thing. Well, this carve-out is actually bad for tobacco because it says that if one of the TPP countries goes after a tobacco company and they cannot sue them. They don't have any sort of litigation or arbitration process to sue these countries. So it's really just going after one industry, but who knows what's going to happen next? Are they going to extend that to more companies? So this really sets a bad precedent.
Now, you're also following the National Defense Authorization Act. It faces an uncertain vote in the Senate. Last week, President Obama threatened to veto. Why is the NDAA so controversial?
This actually goes back to 2011 with the Budget Control Act. This act really set up the spending caps, set up sequestration and all of this, and that's what they're trying to break here. The Obama administration is trying to break the spending caps because they want to spend more on defense. So you have the spending caps, but you also have this overseas contingency operations account, which may be getting up to $90 billion in funding. The problem with this fund is that it doesn't really adhere to any of the budget limits, and it's not counted as part of spending, which obviously if you're going to spend $90 billion, you're spending it, so it should count as part of defense spending.
Another question for you. What's the alternative to overseas contingency operations or OCO funding?
Well, first and foremost, we probably do need a little bit of a contingency fund just in case we get involved in some sort of conflict around the world. But $90 billion, this is nothing more than a slush fund. They use this money to fund projects that the Pentagon may not necessarily want or need. You could probably find a lot of earmarks in this fund. So really, it is a slush fund, and just get rid of it almost completely. You could probably bring it down to $5 or $6 billion, but almost $100 billion, really, it hurts the Pentagon when you do this because now there's no planning in progress. There's no planning as to, well, what war are we going to fight and what can we afford? And there's no impetus to get rid of the wasteful spending.
All right, Dave, before you go, I'd like to talk about GOP presidential candidate Marco Rubio. Today, he delivered a tech speech in New York. Here's an excerpt.
The on-demand platform is one example of an important truth facing us in this election, which is that the American economy, as the global one, is fundamentally being transformed.
Now, Rubio wants to create a new tax classification for independent contractors who work for a single company. It's used in Germany. Tell us more.
Well, isn't this great that you have a candidate actually talking about policy?
I know.
And something that he'll do when he gets into office? And
he's getting some attention for it. The air's not being sucked out of the room like it normally is by you-know-who. So, yeah, tell me more about this.
Absolutely. And what this is it's really Rubio recognizing the tech sector and these new startups, whether it's Airbnb or Uber, and saying, listen, these are different companies. They're not quite full-time employees, but they're not quite independent contractors, so why not have a new classification as a dependent contractor and really get rid of a lot of the regulations that states and other localities are trying to put on these new startups. So I think it's a great recognition that we are living in a new economy, in a new era, and let's move forward and recognize that. And he's not saying don't tax them or don't regulate them, but there needs to be a different hybrid that we can work with here.
Good to get your insight. David Williams, president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.